I fucking adore Gloomwood. Continuing the New Blood trend of a fraction of it being the best thing I've played all year, New Blood knocks it out of the park as always in early access. It's come a long way since the days of the pre-alpha demo, which sold me on it a year ago, and I've been dying to talk about it for quite a while, although I never did a video on it because I deemed the video too brief and the most notable parts I didn't even really want to spoil. Now, normally I'd wait just a little bit longer to make a full-blown video like this. As I mentioned, it is basically a fraction of the full game, but this is something special. And to be quite honest, I was so excited to make this video that I pre-wrote everything I possibly could in the script before I even got to play the damn game. So without further ado, let's embark. You awake in a mysterious gore pit. Well, mysterious to you. I kind of watched the E3 trailer revealing this part a lot. I really like the game. You're quickly turned loose with one simple objective. Make it to the lighthouse. And how you do that is pretty much completely up to you. Now, I could quite literally get out of the fishery in mere seconds, but doing so would mean I miss out on one of the game's best features. The inventory system. They could have stopped at grid-based and called it a day, as in terms of inventory management systems, it will always be the crown jewel. Your inventory is smaller but more intimate. You grow to care about your individual items more because you can't use them as much. And when you do become over-encumbered, it becomes less of a 30-minute trial by dumpy like a weight system, and more so like a 30 seconds of satisfying spring cleaning. Your inventory playpen thinks literally outside the box, as instead of just clicking and dragging around the grid into another grid, you can drag items up, down, and all around the box in a free space. This system is so good, snappy, and responsive that even if you're in a position where you can't access it easily, your character still moans at the thought of using it. The inventory is also fully in real time, which means that if a guard is rapidly approaching you, you will have to go into the inventory and drag out the means of distracting them, all while looking at them still approaching you. This is one of the many ways the game builds tension, another great example being via the save system. Auto-saving is what I'd normally consider one's safety blanket. It's basically a portable infinite use checkpoint to prevent you from really taking any risks. You could play with the honor system and not ever use it, but ultimately you and I both know that you've dabbled at least once or twice, and it ultimately impacts the tension. Gloomwood, on the other hand, has a seemingly seamless manual save system, the catch being there's only about one per area. This probably sounds like a backtracking nightmare, but ultimately this is where the level design comes in to help. When I was within the first zone of the game, the fishery, I only had one checkpoint to use. However, as I explored the level, I unlocked new shortcuts to access said checkpoint easier. The fishery has an absolutely absurd amount of secrets and exploration. I was joking when I said you could escape in the first 2 minutes, and then I realized no, I was 2 feet away from being absolutely correct. I could go on for hours about the amount of escape routes I've taken out of the fishery, but ultimately that would kind of ruin the fun of exploration, so I'll just give a few. You could swim under the docks to avoid enemy detection and the ever-present lighthouse on the coast accidentally revealing your position, but do so at your own risk, because remember who works on this game. Another escape method relates to the elevator. One of the first items you're able to interact with in the game is an elevator button used to repair an elevator to gain access to the second floor. To the untrained eye, it seems like there's no other way out, but to me, I beat what you can play so far and I'm still holding onto that button. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's probably tied to a secret ending. I'm gonna stumble upon a machine that can fix all the horrors in this town and all it's missing is one suspiciously elevator-shaped button. Speaking of buttons, I should probably get on to the third and final escape route, and involving my favorite tool in the game. The Undertaker is a single-shot silenced pistol that fires slugs. With its default firing mode, it seems to be a Nerf gun with a silencer, but don't be fooled by its seemingly useless appearance in combat. It is one of the best utility weapons you could possibly get. Whilst it's about as lethal as its real-world counterpart, it also happens to be quite good at pressing people's buttons. In this case, quite literally. The gun isn't completely harmless, however. In fact, amusingly, its other alternate ammo firing type is one of the most lethal bullets currently had in the game. There's a lot of underlying mysteries right now to Gloomwood, like what is the mysterious madness plague mutating everything in sight, and what is the mysterious giant structures underground that hum and look like ribs? I have a leading theory on one of these, and it's that everyone has moth brain. Setting anything on fire causes a vicious cycle that will wipe out the entire map, guaranteed. I understand this is definitely getting nerfed, and by the time you watch this, this may not even be a thing anymore, but I feel like I had to talk about it because it is really, really funny. Getting back on track, I probably should start talking about that third escape route. On my third or fourth playthrough, I realized that the fishery was entirely powered by a single generator guarded by a door I have no earthly way of opening yet. At first I thought turning the power was an impossible feat, until I realized not only did the Undertaker shoot buttons, it also could shoot through the thin mesh wire gate. So I took my shot and then... darkness. I have played this game around 20 times. A couple times for myself and a lot of times to record footage, and I have to say, playing with the power off was a completely different beast. Even though it was harder for enemies to make me out, I also couldn't see any of the loot I was trying to go for, so I essentially had to sneak around the fishery in complete silence using the Undertaker as a makeshift flashlight. There are many, many, many ways to explore just like this, and while you do, you are bound to notice the fantastic visual and sound design. These two go hand in hand to help out with the game's atmosphere, and the most striking of the two immediately is probably the sound design. Because the most striking thing about the cave isn't the monsters, it's the marsh. In terms of tackling the situation, guns and stealth are going to be your two main tools. Personally, my preference is a bit of a mix of the two, where I cultivate my Macaulay Culkin skills and create traps for enemies. The gunplay feels very nice and responsive, and they're good panic buttons / tools for completely styling on enemies. Fair warning though, the amount of enemies the noise attracts may outnumber the amount of bullets you've collected up to that point. Stealth seems to be the more methodical and safer solution. You can get away with a lot in the fishery, but it's not exactly an I win button as the game is slowly but surely adapting to your stealth. On future playthroughs, carefully combing everything for supplies will help you grow to appreciate the world even more. If waking up in a gore pit didn't set off any red flags, you essentially walked into a world 3/5 of the way through a Victorian apocalypse. Madmen and corpses flood the streets, buildings have been boarded up and ransacked, but stuff still feels lived in. Some places feel recently lived in. The biggest thing that caught my attention was all the corpses lying around. It was nice to see a game feature just so many fellow members of the Newsboy Cap community. We're a dying breed, you see. Apparently? Terrifying revelations aside, I've really grown to love every facet of this game. It's the type of game where every single piece of footage you've seen so far involved me to some degree relaunching and re-recording the game, because for some reason the way I present games and I play them don't always line up. This is not critique, mind you. In fact, I am actually using this to praise the game's two strongest factors: the replay value and the aforementioned non-linearity. With the elevator button, for instance, I realized that not only have I gone through the entire game multiple times without using it, I also never even recorded any footage of me using it. And even though this started to get kind of ridiculous towards the end, I never had a bad time with the game itself. It boggles my mind that a game I've played this much, I've only scratched the surface of. So far in early access, we haven't even entered the city the game is named after. And whilst I can go on about how amazing it is that I've gotten this much enjoyment from basically this game's intro, it also means this is where my stop is. I've alluded to this, but the nature of an early access game gives some complications when making videos. Stuff that would normally be the first thing I talk about in critiques usually had to be omitted from videos like this because everything is so constantly changing that anything I do say is already probably changed by the time this video goes up. I could become a Gloomtuber and make a video every single time detailing whatever changed in every update, but as tempting as that sounds, I feel like that would spoil the magic a little bit. The magic of this game comes from the unknowns. I feel comfortable saying this much to you because, well, I know in reality I've shown you so little of what it has to offer. In fact, in true Gloomwood fashion, I even snuck around even addressing the horror aspects of it yet. Because after playing through the game and demo, I know for a fact you aren't ready for it, and I wouldn't be doing my job right if I didn't keep it that way. And with that, I have nothing left to say except for buy and wishlist Gloomwood today. Literally. Even if you want to play the game front to back in one sitting without any updates in between, I still recommend purchasing it now compared to later. With the game being in early access, you can actually purchase it right now for cheaper than you would at full release. Regardless of your decision, I do hope this video helped you want to try the game a little bit. At the time of this recording, the next update should be opening the tavern, which even I don't know anything about, so good luck.